Hello everyone, I hope you're all keeping well, healthy and happy. In this video I'm going to talk about the Satanic neo-feminist agenda. Okay? Why are we going to talk about this? Well, because right now, across Western civilization, we are seeing the absolute breakdown of gender relations between men and women. And this is happening, as I say, right across the board. There's no country which is exempt from this in the West. And in fact, even countries like India are experiencing the very same phenomenon. Okay? Now, there's a lot of people out there that can pinpoint exactly what is taking place, right? They can tell you the problems that exist today, but they cannot tell you the reasons why these problems exist. And that's what we're going to do here. To understand when and where the problem began, you actually have to go back to the 1800s, essentially, and to a man called Francois Fourier, who I've spoken about many times. A lot of you have been asking how to spell his surname so that you can look him up. The surname is spelt F-O-U-R-I-E-R. Okay? Go and look this man up. Please do that. Until you do that, you will not understand where socialism came from, where communism came from, and why it is linked directly to the dark occult. It is linked directly to what was old school Luciferian thought, satanic thought. I'm not talking about the pop culture phenomenon of Satanism, which popped up with Anton LaVey. Okay, I'm talking about real hardcore satanic belief. What is satanic belief? It means to be adversarial or to be opposed to humanity. That is what the root word means, and that is actually what Satanism fundamentally is as well. You see, real true Satanism holds that the people who adhere to its tenets, which are those of absolute selfishness, they believe that they are gods unto themselves. Okay, they believe they are gods unto themselves, and therefore they have a right to wreak havoc upon the unbegun, upon the masses, the useful idiots, the expendable containers. Right? They believe they have this right. They believe they have the right to socially engineer people. Okay, which is why socialism and communism do this. It all actually stems from theological belief and doctrine, which comes from, as I say, the dark occult, the Kabbalah primarily, and the ideals of the tree of death, which are, by and large, a philosophical system of nihilism. Okay, now, I don't have time in this video to go through all of that. I have done in previous videos. Okay, and you're welcome to look that work up. The video that I've released on the occult specifically, go and look that up, where I explain what the occult is, and I go into depth with the interpretation of the Economist cover. You should also look up the video which I did explaining that you're living under an occultocracy, not a democracy. Okay, go and look that video up as well. Watch it carefully and learn from it. But let's get down to brass tacks here. In terms of this satanic neo-feminist agenda, where did this come from? Right? Because we understand socialism, we understand communism, we understand the evils of them, the fact that they have collectively murdered and killed over 100 million people in total. Well, that's the proof in the pudding. Judge a tree by its fruits, right? So we understand that, but where did this neo-feminist agenda come from? What is it? Well, it is basically socialist feminism, and it began around the same time as socialism and communism proper. It branched off from Marxist feminism, but we'll get to all of that. But let's first look at an organization which began in 1969, which destroyed American society. Okay? And this was the Chicago Women's Liberation Union, also known as the CWLU. I spoke briefly about this organization in the very first video I put up on this channel, right? And as I say, it was a socialist feminist organization founded in 1969 at a conference which was held in Palatine, Illinois, by its founders, Naomi Weinstein, Vivian Rothstein, Heather Booth, and Ruth Sergel. The CWLU spent almost a decade organizing to challenge what it called sexism and class oppression, which it saw as being inextricably linked. The group is best known for the 1972 pamphlet, Socialist Feminism, a Strategy for the Women's Movement. And this was done by the Hyde Park chapter of the Chicago Women's Liberation Union, the CWLU. Again, the members in that particular chapter were Heather Booth, Day Kramer, Susan Davis, Deb Dobbin, Robin Kaufman, and Toby Klass. There are no prizes for guessing what each of these people had in common, what each of these women and those who were supporting them had in common. You can debate that amongst yourselves. But the CWLU also published outreach publications, such as Womankind, Blazing Star, and Secret Storm. Now, Blazing Star was a newspaper. Well, it wasn't really a newspaper as such. It was, well, it sort of was. It was an outreach newspaper that was published in 1975 that portrayed lesbianism as being interlinked with feminism. Okay? It adjoined lesbianism and feminism as the one and the same cause. And the lesbian group of the CWLU took on this specific title called the Blazing Star because there was a previous publication which had also championed lesbian rights. The stated goal of the organization, that is the CWLU, was to continue the long march through the institutions and destroy the family unit through social engineering. This is directly in line with Francois Fourier's beliefs and other socialist and communist think tanks which still exist today, like the Fabian Society, like the Tavistock Institute, like the Club of Rome. You see, the methodology is the same. What they do is map class oppression theory and class struggle onto gender dynamics and create a brand new victim class. And what this actually does, the effect this has, is that it atomizes the population. See, socialist feminism is a two-pronged theory which broadens Marxist feminism's argument for the role of capitalism in the so-called oppression of women. Okay? Now, there were two other socialist feminist organizations that were around during the same sort of time, called Radical Women and the Freedom Socialist Party. And both of those organizations believed very, very strongly, and they admitted to this, they believed very strongly in the classic Marxist writings of Frederick Engels, who wrote two publications himself on these concepts, The Origin of the Family and Private Property and the State. And his stated goal in those, as I explained, was the destruction of the family unit through social engineering. Now, the CWLU has been proven by several researchers to have been funded primarily by sources inside the MVD and the GRU within the former communist Soviet Union during the height of the Cold War. They were basically a fifth column, if you will. Okay? This was subversion at its finest to destroy America and her allies. Now, socialist feminism is a subtype of Marxist feminist theory, which focuses on the social institutions of private property and capitalism. According to Marxist feminists, private property is the root of so-called oppression, the so-called oppression of women. Okay? Marxist feminism's foundation is laid by Friedrich Engels in his analysis of gender oppression in that publication we were speaking about, and the other one as well, The Origin of the Family and Private Property and the State, both of which were published in 1884. In those, and this is a very important point, so I hope you're paying very, very close attention to this. In both of those publications, Engels argued that the differences between men and women are not a result of male and female biological dispositions, but of social relations, i.e., that sex differences and gender differences between men and women are social constructs. Now, we know that this is a ludicrous notion, but this social constructivism spawned a branch of postmodernist thought which invaded all the educational establishments. Engels himself admitted that one of his goals was to absolutely decimate and destroy the nuclear family, because he believed that the widespread social phenomenon associated with female sexual morality was due to exclusive control of private property, and that said private property had to be redistributed, or let me put that another way that you'll understand, that the state would steal personal private property from those men and women that were working very hard and give it to those women that weren't, based purely on their gender, so as to create a schism in the natural social dynamics between women and men. Here's an interesting point at this juncture. There was, of course, a branch of the Communist Party inside America called the Communist Party USA, which had been funded and founded, of course, again by these same communists, which had taken power in the Soviet Union. There was a woman called Mary Inman, who was a member of the Communist Party, who later in her life challenged the Communist Party's orthodox position by arguing that the home is the centre of production and that housewives carry out productive labour. Her writings include In Women's Defence, which was published in 1940. If you have the time and the inclination, read that. And Women Power in 1942. But the Communist Party USA leadership began an official attack on Inman's work for purported ideological deviation in 1941. A series of articles were written against Inman's ideas, and they appeared in the party's literal monthly publication called The New Masses. So she was heavily punished and censored for wrongthink against the party, for speaking out what she later realized in her life was a moral wrong. This brings me to another point, and it's a very, very important point, by the way. Most women today do not know the difference between right moral actions and wrong moral actions. They weren't raised by their parents. Their parents didn't raise them. They merely brought them up. But to raise someone means to lift them up through teaching them right actions from wrong actions. But instead, these women were left to their own devices. And actually, it was worse than that. They were left to the indoctrination camps that we today call the school system. And the same thing happened to them. It was continued in colleges and universities. They were taught nothing but this exact relativistic garbage, the social constructivist garbage that we spoke about, by these institutions, which were completely invaded and infiltrated. They were also taught that promiscuity was the road to happiness. To give in to immediate gratifications is the road to happiness in an overly sexualized, hypergamous culture driven by centralized government and corporate control. They were taught to worship the state, even when the state is morally wrong, when it is in the moral wrong. Okay? For example, to illustrate this, we were talking about private property. If you own something, according to natural law, the government or the state has no right, and in fact no individual or group does have any right to infringe that and to take your personal property away from you. And if they do, or they try to, you have every right in order to defend yourself from that. Okay? But because people today do not understand natural law, i.e., that there are consequences for your actions, and in fact because these forces of socialism, communism, and what is fundamentally the dark occult, Satanism, what they want to teach people is this relativism instead of the fact that there are such things as natural laws. For example, the constraints which exist upon us, whether we are men or women, aren't merely due to social phenomenon, but are actually due to biology in a great many ways. Biology decided that women would be the gender, would be the sex, that would have to carry children for 9 months. Men didn't decide that, nature decided that. Okay? So this relativistic garbage which is taught is the problem. This constructionist nonsense, this postmodernist garbage, which leads only to nihilism because you believe everything's a social construct and there are no absolutes. It destroys a person. Okay? And this is part of the reason why today women aren't taught, and haven't been for the last 40 or 50 years, that there are consequences to actions, right? Most women in the West today have no moral compass. Zero. And the question is, why was this done to them? And I can tell you the answer. And I'll end this video on this. You see, women one day become mothers, right? Again, this is determined by nature, right? And they are the primary caregivers to children. So a mother is the first person to impart her wisdom, or what is currently happening is the lack thereof, the lack of wisdom is being imparted to children. Okay? You see, the socialists and the communists and the Satanists knew that by damaging the women, you damage future generations, which is why garbage is being taught to women and girls, which is why they were never taught the value of men, of the sacred masculine or the sacred feminine. These principles have eluded them because they were not taught to them. And this is why we're seeing the destruction and degradation of Western civilization. And it is all actually due to social engineering by these institutions. A lot of people want to put the argument forward that this is natural, okay, that it's in women's nature. No, it's part of their darker nature, sure, but it is not absolutely inherent. This idea that we must succumb to our base animal natures is one which has been propagated by the communists and the socialists and the Satanists, okay? The dark occultists. It's been propagated by them because, as I said before, they believe they're gods, okay? And therefore they want everyone else to behave like animals so that they can feel superior to them. Okay? This intellectual arrogance, this intellectual superiority which exists in their minds, in the minds of the controllers of the human species presently, doesn't want them doesn't want to see human beings become greater than animals, to be better than animals, even though we were gifted with these remarkable gifts of being able to ascend beyond our mere animal nature. That's what this is all about. What they're trying to bring about, and what they have done successfully for over 160 years, is to try and bring about this apocalyptic scenario in which social Darwinism wins out. Where, in fact, it's worse than that. It's to create a society full of psychopaths which will purely focus on destruction in order to destroy humankind. Right? That's what it's centered on. I mean, it's insane. It's eschatological, it's nihilistic, it's insane, but they want to do this, and they have done this, and this is part of the reason why all of these things are happening. Now, if you don't believe me on this, okay, if you don't understand what I've been teaching and saying for the last year, the last 12 months, then I don't know where you've been living. Because every single thing I have told you on this channel is 1000%. Okay, obviously you can't get 1000%, but 100% verifiable. I've given you sources to go to, I've given you books to go to, I've given you the direct texts out of which these ideas have come from. These nihilistic ideas which the socialists and the communists and the Satanists believe in. So it's up to you people out there now to tell others about this fact, to educate them in what the heck is actually going on. Okay? Because I have done my best, and I'm continuing to do my best here to help you to see what is going on right now. The fact that a select few elite people have socially engineered governments, corporations, and whole societies into this self-destructive pattern. Okay, they've manipulated human behavior. They are master manipulators. And they are succeeding. People are being polarized and segregated and atomized. They no longer feel love or empathy for each other. This is very, very dangerous. But anyway, I'll leave it there for this video. But I hope you found that informative in some sense. Thank you very much for watching. Take good care of yourselves, and God bless you all.